Commander Vexhar stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought, his 6 eyes fixed on the blue-green planet below. Earth. Such a simple name for such a simple world. The tactical display showed the planet's defenses had already fallen. Their primitive satellites and space stations had been swept aside like dust. Now only the ground invasion remained. "Sir, the landing zones have been selected," Lieutenant Kree announced, her mandibles clicking with anticipation. "The humans have concentrated their forces in their cities. We've identified several resource-rich areas away from their population centers where we can establish our initial bases." Vexhar's tentacles writhed with satisfaction. The Galactic Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, and this backwater planet would be no different. The humans had put up more resistance than expected in space, true, but their technology was centuries behind the Empire's. Their projectile weapons and crude nuclear devices were like throwing stones at a battleship. "What about this area?" Vexhar pointed to a vast green expanse on the tactical map. "Sensors show minimal human presence but abundant biological resources." "The Amazon rainforest, Commander," Kree replied, consulting her datapad. "The humans call it Earth's lungs. Dense vegetation, high humidity, extreme biodiversity. Our xenobiologists are excited about the potential specimens." "Perfect. Deploy the 3rd Battalion there. Set up a forward operating base and begin resource extraction immediately. The jungle is just trees and primitive life forms. Nothing our environmental suits can't handle." The drop ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like metal rain. Inside, Colonel Zarthin checked his weapon one final time. His soldiers, each standing 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor plating, were the Empire's finest. They had conquered desert worlds where the sand itself was carnivorous, ice planets where the temperature could freeze metal in seconds, and volcanic worlds where the very air burned. A simple jungle would be nothing. "Remember," Zarthin addressed his troops, "the humans are weak. Their bodies are fragile, requiring constant water and specific temperature ranges. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. This jungle is their territory, but we are the Galactic Empire. We adapt. We conquer. We endure." The ships touched down in a clearing, their landing thrusters scorching the earth black. The doors opened with a hiss, and the soldiers marched out in perfect formation. The jungle air hit them immediately, thick, humid, alive with sounds they had never heard before. Birds screeched overhead, insects buzzed in clouds. In the distance, something howled. "Establish a perimeter," Zarthin ordered. "Engineers, begin construction of the base. Science team, start cataloging the local flora and fauna. I want this area secured within the hour." Private Tekmar was among the first to enter the tree line. His environmental suit's display showed normal readings. Oxygen levels compatible, no immediate toxins detected, temperature within acceptable ranges. He pushed through the undergrowth, his plasma rifle ready. The trees towered above him, their canopy so thick it blocked out most of the sunlight. Vines hung like curtains, the ground squelched under his boots. "This place is disgusting," he muttered to his squad mate Corvell. "Everything is wet, and it smells like decay." "The humans choose to live on this world," Corvell replied. "Shows how primitive they are." They pushed deeper, marking trees for removal. The base would need clear sight lines, and the timber would be useful for construction. Tekmar paused as his motion sensor pinged. Something small, barely registering. He looked down to see a line of insects marching across the forest floor. They were tiny, each no bigger than a grain of sand. He dismissed them and continued forward. The first sign of trouble came an hour later. Private Jackson, working on the perimeter fence, suddenly started scratching at his neck. "Something's wrong with my suit," he complained. "It's malfunctioning. I'm getting false readings of breach points." The medic, Orentar, scanned him with her diagnostic tool. Your suit integrity is compromised in 17 locations. How is that possible? The material is rated for micrometeorite impacts. Jackson's scratching became more frantic. It burns! Something's inside! They rushed him to the medical tent and removed his suit. His blue-scaled skin was covered in tiny red welts, and as they watched, small insects emerged from the wounds. Army ants. They had found microscopic weak points in the suit's joints and chewed through, their mandibles secreting acid that dissolved the advanced polymers. Impossible, Orentar breathed. The suit material is designed to withstand. They're not trying to break it, the xenobiologist, Dr. Yareth, interrupted. He had been studying the captured specimens. They're dissolving it. Their acid is specifically breaking down the polymer chains. It's like they're designed for it. Designed? They're just insects. But it was only the beginning. As the day progressed, more problems emerged. The clearing they had chosen for the base had looked solid, but the ground began to shift. What they had taken for Earth was actually a massive colony of termites. The vibrations from their equipment had disturbed them, and now millions poured out, attacking the landing struts of their ships. The metal began to corrode where the termites touched it. "Sir, we need to move the ships," the engineer reported to Zarthin. "These insects are compromising the hull integrity." "How? Our hulls can withstand plasma fire." "They're not using force, sir. It's chemical. They're breaking down the molecular bonds. We've never seen anything like it." As they struggled to relocate the ships, the jungle's assault intensified. Corporal Merdan was standing guard when he felt something drop onto his helmet. He looked up to see branches overhead, seemingly empty. Then another drop, and another. He realized with growing horror that what he had taken for rain was actually saliva. The trees above were full of snakes, dozens of them, their heat signatures masked by the ambient temperature of the jungle. One struck, fangs hitting his helmet with enough force to crack the visor. The snake fell, apparently stunned, but the damage was done. Air began to leak in, humid. Thick air full of spores and microorganisms his suit had been filtering out. Within minutes, Merdan was gasping, his respiratory system overwhelmed by Earth's aggressive bacteria. Night fell like a curtain, and with it came new terrors. The darkness was absolute under the canopy. Their night vision systems, designed for the emptiness of space or the clear air of desert worlds, struggled with the jungle's complexity. Every leaf was a false reading. Every vine could be a snake. Every shadow could hide a predator. Private Nar-Uk was on patrol when he stepped into what looked like solid ground. His leg sank immediately into a hidden pool of water. He tried to pull free, but something had his boot. He looked down to see the water churning with activity. Piranhas. His suit held for exactly 3 seconds before the combined assault of hundreds of teeth found a weakness. He screamed as they poured in, his leg disappearing in a cloud of purple blood. His squad mates pulled him free, but the damage was done. The medics worked frantically, but Earth's bacteria were already invading the wounds. Their antibiotics, developed for known galactic pathogens, were useless against Earth's evolved microorganisms. "We need to evacuate him to the ship," Orentar said. But the ships were under siege. The termites had been joined by other insects. Wasps built nests in the engine intakes. Spiders wove webs over sensor arrays. Vines grew at an impossible rate, wrapping around landing struts. The jungle was literally consuming their technology. By morning, the mighty 3rd Battalion was in full retreat. They had lost 17 soldiers, not to human weapons, not to combat, but to the jungle itself. As they lifted off, Zarthin looked back at the green expanse below. It looked peaceful, serene even, but he knew better now. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Command is asking for a status report." Zarthin was silent for a long moment. How could he explain? How could he tell the Empire that they had been defeated not by the humans but by their world? That every insect, every plant, every microorganism was a weapon evolved over millions of years? He thought of the human phrase he had dismissed as primitive nonsense. The Amazon is Earth's lungs. Now he understood. It wasn't just poetry. The jungle breathed, and its breath was death to invaders. The dropship shuddered as something impacted the hull. Zarthin looked out to see birds, simple Earth birds, pecking at the sensor nodes. They had learned in just one day where the ships were vulnerable. "Get us to orbit," he ordered. "Maximum speed." As they climbed, his tactical officer pulled up satellite imagery of other landing sites. The reports were coming in now. The Sahara teams were being buried by sandstorms that seemed to target their equipment. The Arctic teams found that Earth's bacteria could survive in ice, attacking their suits when they thought they were safe. The ocean teams discovered that Earth's marine life was just as hostile as its land-based organisms. "Sir," the officer said quietly, "the humans, they're not even fighting us. They're just watching." Zarthin looked at the data. It was true. Human military forces were holding position around their cities, making no move to attack the Imperial forces. They didn't need to. Their world was doing the fighting for them. He remembered the briefing about humans. Fragile, weak, no natural weapons. But now he understood the truth. Humans didn't need claws or armor or enhanced senses. They had evolved on a death world, a planet where every form of life was in constant competition. They had survived not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable, and their world had shaped them, just as it was now reshaping the Empire's understanding of what a weapon could be. The dropship reached the safety of space, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. But Zarthin knew this was just the beginning. The Empire had expected to fight humans. Instead, they were fighting an entire biosphere that had 4 billion years of evolution behind it. Below, the Amazon rainforest stretched to the horizon, green and lush and deadly. It had taken less than 24 hours for Earth to teach the Galactic Empire a lesson they would never forget. Some worlds don't need to be defended. They defend themselves. Admiral Kextor studied the holographic display with all 6 of his eyes, each one focusing on different data streams from the failed Earth invasion. The conference room aboard the Imperial flagship was silent, except for the hum of the engines. Around the table sat the Empire's best military minds, and none of them had answers. 17% casualties in the first day, Kextor said, his voice carrying the weight of disbelief. Not from combat, from the environment. In our entire history of conquest, we have never seen anything like this. General Morax shifted in his seat, his exoskeleton creaking. The humans have weaponized their biosphere somehow. They must have. No natural ecosystem could be this hostile. Our science division disagrees, Dr. Quinnell interjected. The lead xenobiologist pulled up her own display. Every organism we've cataloged shows natural evolution. The army ants, the piranhas, the bacteria, they're all native Earth species. The humans didn't create them. They simply survived them. Then we adapt, Admiral Kextor declared. We are the Galactic Empire. We have conquered gas giants where the pressure would crush diamond. We have taken worlds orbiting black holes. Earth is just another challenge to overcome. The second invasion began 2 weeks later. This time they came prepared. New environmental suits, rated against acid and micro breaches. Weapons designed to clear vegetation at the molecular level. Bases that hovered above the ground, denying the insects and plants direct access. They even brought their own atmosphere, contained in massive dome generators. Commander Yorth led the new Amazon expedition. His dropship descended toward a different section of the rainforest, far from the previous landing site. They had learned. This time, they would not underestimate Earth. The domes deployed perfectly, creating sealed environments 50 meters in diameter. The hovering platforms kept them off the forest floor. Sonic deterrents drove away larger animals. For the first 12 hours, everything went according to plan. You see, Yorth told his officers. "The jungle is just another environment to master. We have contained it." He was wrong. Earth had faced invaders before, not from space, but invasive species from other continents. The jungle had learned to adapt, to overcome, to consume what didn't belong. And the Empire's technology, for all its advancement, was just another foreign element to be processed. It started with the morning mist. Water vapor, nothing more, condensing on the dome's surface as the temperature changed. But this wasn't ordinary water. It carried microscopic organisms, bacteria that had learned to break down plastics over the decades of human pollution. The dome material, an advanced polymer, began to develop tiny spots of weakness. Inside, the soldiers noticed nothing at first. Their recycled air was clean, their hovering platforms were stable. Lieutenant Drex was monitoring the perimeter when she noticed something odd on the scanner. The trees outside were moving, but there was no wind. "Sir," she called to Yorth, "the vegetation is displaying unusual activity." Yorth checked the readings himself. The trees were indeed moving, growing at an accelerated rate. Their branches stretched toward the dome like fingers. He watched, fascinated, as vines crept up the dome's surface, finding the microscopic weak points the bacteria had created. "Increase power to the dome," he ordered. "Activate the electrical defense grid." The dome crackled with energy, and the vines recoiled, but only temporarily. Within hours they returned, and now they were different. The leaves had developed a waxy coating that insulated them from the electrical charge. The jungle was learning. On the third day, the rain came. Not ordinary rain, but a deluge that turned the world into a gray wall of water. The dome held, but the water found ways in, tiny breaches where the vines had worked their chemistry. And with the water came new life, spores of fungi that could survive in almost any environment, seeds that had waited years for the right conditions, bacteria that thrived in the mixture of earth water and alien technology. Sergeant Pex was the first to notice the growth inside the dome. Green fuzz on the metal surfaces, orange fungi on the food supplies, black mold creeping along the seals of their equipment. The sterilization protocols that worked on every other world were failing here. "It's the humidity," the science officer Tixar explained. "Earth's jungle humidity isn't just water. It's a cocktail of organic compounds. Our filters weren't designed for this level of biological saturation. They tried to burn it out, but the fire suppression systems activated, spraying foam that the Earth organisms found delicious. Within hours, the foam was a garden of multicolored growth. Outside, the hovering platforms were facing their own problems. Birds had discovered that the anti-gravity generators created updrafts. They gathered in thousands, riding the artificial thermals. Their droppings coated the platform's surfaces, and the acid in their waste began to corrode the sensitive equipment. When the soldiers tried to clear them away, they found that the birds had learned exactly where the sonic deterrent's blind spots were. But it wasn't just the small creatures. On the fifth night, something large moved in the darkness beyond the dome. The motion sensors went wild, then failed entirely. In the morning, they found the sensor posts covered in some kind of secretion that had hardened like cement. Trail camera footage showed the culprit, a jaguar, but not hunting. It had carefully sprayed each sensor, marking its territory with a precision that suggested intelligence. "They're working together," Private Lontu whispered, and though his squad mates laughed, the thought lingered. The ants cleared paths for the vines. The birds dropped seeds in the dome's crevices. The fungi softened surfaces for the bacteria. It wasn't coordinated, not exactly, but it was a system that had evolved over millions of years to deal with competition. By the end of the first week, the dome was failing. The hover platforms were listing, their generators clogged with organic matter. The soldiers were sick, their bodies fighting infections their immune systems had never encountered. And still the rain fell. Yorth called for evacuation, but the dropships couldn't land. The clearing they had made was gone, reclaimed by growth so vigorous it seemed to mock their efforts. Trees that should have taken years to mature had grown in days. The pilots reported that their navigation systems were malfunctioning. Something in the air was interfering with their electronics. Pollen, Dr. Quinnell said when they finally analyzed it. The plants are releasing pollen that's rich in metallic compounds. It's creating a kind of natural chaff, blocking our signals. The revelation was staggering. The jungle wasn't just fighting them with tooth and claw, it was using chemistry, physics, every aspect of nature as a weapon. And it wasn't malicious. This was simply how Earth's ecosystem worked, a constant, relentless competition for resources where only the most adaptable survived. Meanwhile, the human military continued to wait. Satellite images showed them maintaining defensive positions, making no move to attack. They sent no communications, no threats, no demands. They simply watched. General Torres of the Earth Defense Force stood in his command center, monitoring the alien positions. His aide, Colonel Chen, looked frustrated. "Sir, shouldn't we be attacking while they're weakened?" Torres shook his head. "Why waste lives and ammunition? Earth is doing the job for us. Every minute they spend fighting the jungle is a minute they're not fighting us." "But, sir, what if they adapt? What if they find a way to survive?" Torres smiled grimly. "Colonel, humans have been trying to conquer the Amazon for thousands of years. We've had chainsaws, bulldozers, fire, chemicals, and still the moment we turn our backs, it reclaims everything. The aliens think they're fighting plants and animals. They're fighting 4 billion years of evolution." Back in the Amazon, the Third Dome expedition was in full collapse. The jungle had found every weakness, exploited every vulnerability. Soldiers reported hallucinations from fungal spores. Equipment failed as bacteria ate through circuits. The very air inside the domes became toxic, as Earth's microorganisms waged chemical warfare on each other, with the aliens caught in the crossfire. The final blow came from an unexpected source. The Empire's food supplies, sealed and sterilized, began to spoil, not from contamination, but from within. Earth's bacteria, it turned out, could survive in a dormant state in almost any condition. The heat of re-entry, the cold of space, the radiation of sterilization, some always survived. And when they found the nutrient-rich alien food, they exploded in growth. Yorth made the call. Full retreat. As the survivors lifted off in emergency pods, he looked back at the green hell below. The dome was already being consumed, vines wrapping around it like a gift being packaged. Within days, there would be no sign they had ever been there. The other expeditions fared no better. In the Sahara, sandstorms clogged every filter, and the temperature variations between day and night stressed their equipment beyond tolerance. In the Arctic, bacteria that thrived in extreme cold infected their systems, while the very ice seemed to shift and crack with purposeful malevolence. The oceans were worse. Pressure, salinity, and creatures that had evolved in Earth's most alien environment made underwater bases impossible. Admiral Kextor received the reports in silence. 43% casualties, 0 permanent bases established, 0 resources extracted. The mightiest military force in the galaxy was being defeated by nature itself. "What about bombardment?" General Morax suggested desperately. "We could sterilize the landing zones from orbit." "And destroy the resources we came for," Kextor responded. "Besides, our projections show that Earth's ecosystem would recover within decades. The radiation might even accelerate some mutations." The room fell silent again. They had come to conquer a primitive world and found instead a fortress built by evolution itself. Every organism was a soldier. Every microbe was a weapon. And the humans had learned to live with it all. Dr. Quinnell pulled up a final piece of data. "There's something else." the human colonization patterns. They've built their cities in the areas that are marginally less hostile, temperate zones, places with fewer natural hazards. They've essentially made a treaty with their world. Stay in these areas, and the planet won't actively try to kill you as much. You're saying they're prisoners on their own world? No, she corrected. They're survivors. And they've learned something we haven't. Sometimes the wisest course is not to conquer nature, but to find a way to coexist with it. As the fleet prepared to retreat from Earth's orbit, a single transmission came from the planet below. General Torres appeared on their screens, looking remarkably calm for a man whose planet was under invasion. "Galactic Empire," he said simply. "Earth accepts your withdrawal. We have no interest in pursuing conflict beyond our world. But know this. Our planet has been preparing for invaders for 4 billion years. You're not the first to try to conquer Earth. You won't be the last. And like all the others, you've learned that our world doesn't need us to defend it. It defends itself." The transmission ended. The Empire's fleet began to power up their faster-than-light drives, ready to leave this nightmare behind. But the lessons would stay with them. They had come seeking resources and found instead a masterclass in survival. They had met the humans, a species they had dismissed as weak, and discovered that weakness and strength were relative terms. On Earth, the rainforest stood eternal and patient. The trees grew. The rain fell. The cycles of life and death continued as they had for millions of years. And somewhere in the green depths, a jaguar padded silently through the underbrush, past a clearing where strange metal had once stood. There was no sign of it now. The jungle had reclaimed its own, as it always did. The Galactic Empire would mark Earth as off-limits, a death world too dangerous to colonize. But the humans would simply call it home. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Empire's retreat from Earth. In the council chambers of the Imperial capital, a dozen species gathered around a holographic display of the blue-green world that had humbled their mighty fleets. Earth had become a legend, a cautionary tale told in military academies across the galaxy. Ambassador Thuvok of the Mercantile Guild cleared his throat, a sound like grinding stones. "The humans have submitted a formal application to join the Galactic Trade Network." The chamber erupted in noise. Tentacles writhed, mandibles clicked, and various appendages gestured in alarm. "They dare?" General Morax slammed his armored fist on the table. "After our retreat, they seek to join us as equals?" "Perhaps," Thuvok continued calmly. "We should hear what they offer." The hologram shifted, showing a human woman in simple clothing. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the galactic community, smiled warmly. The sight of a human still made many in the chamber uncomfortable. How could something so fragile-looking have evolved on such a hostile world? "Esteemed members of the Galactic Empire," she began, "Earth comes not as a conquered world seeking mercy, nor as conquerors seeking dominion. We come as traders, with goods you cannot find anywhere else in the galaxy." The display changed, showing images that made the assembled aliens lean forward in interest and horror. "Our first offering, pharmaceutical compounds. Earth's biodiversity has produced more unique chemical combinations than any 10 worlds combined. This fungus from our Amazon rainforest produces a compound that regenerates neural tissue in 17 tested species. This bacteria from our deep ocean vents can survive in the stomach acid of a Crexian and cure their endemic digestive disorders." Morax scoffed. "You expect us to ingest Earth organisms? After what they did to our soldiers?" Dr. Chen's smile didn't waver. "General, those same organisms that defended our world can heal yours. The difference is consent and cooperation. The jungle that killed your soldiers has saved billions of human lives. We've learned to ask it nicely," she continued, showing more examples. "Antibiotics that worked on diseases the Empire had fought for centuries. biological computers using modified neural networks from fungi, materials stronger than steel spun by insects. The list went on. But how? Dr. Quinnell, who had been part of the failed invasion, couldn't help but ask. Your world is hostile to all life, including yours. How do you harvest these resources without it fighting back? Dr. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. You made a fundamental error in your invasion, if I may be so bold. You tried to conquer Earth. We learned long ago that you don't conquer nature. You negotiate with it. The display showed humans working in the Amazon, but their approach was entirely different from what the Empire had attempted. They moved slowly, carefully. They took only what was offered. They planted 2 trees for everyone they harvested. They left offerings, nutrients, water, care for the ecosystem. You see, Dr. Chen explained, Earth's biosphere isn't malicious, it's protective. When you came with violence, intending to strip our resources and destroy our ecosystems, the planet responded as it would to any invasive threat. But when we approach with respect, understanding that we're part of the system, not its masters, Earth provides. The chamber was silent, processing this alien concept. The Empire had always taken what it wanted through force. The idea of negotiating with a biosphere was as foreign as Earth itself. There's more, Dr. Chen added. We offer guide services. Guide services? Admiral Kextor spoke for the first time. You mean? Yes. Human guides who can help you survive on Earth. Scientists who want to study our ecosystems. Tourists who want to see wonders that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. Even military training. After all, if you can survive Earth, you can survive anywhere. The audacity of it took their breath away. The humans were offering to teach the Empire's soldiers using the same world that had defeated them. General Torres appeared on the screen beside Dr. Chen. Think of it as graduation from the galaxy's toughest survival school. Your soldiers will learn patience from our predators, chemistry from our insects, adaptation from our microbes. They'll return to you not just as warriors, but as survivors. Thuvak was the first to see the true brilliance of the offer. You're not just trading goods, you're trading expertise, knowledge of survival that no other world can provide. Precisely, Dr. Chen nodded. But there are conditions. Any visitors to Earth must follow our protocols. Respect for the environment is non-negotiable. Take only what is given. Leave no permanent mark. Work with nature, not against it. And if we refuse, Morax growled. Dr. Chen's smile turned sad. Then you miss out on the greatest classroom in the galaxy. Earth has lessons to teach about more than just survival. It teaches humility, adaptation, and the strength found in cooperation rather than domination. The debate raged for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Empire needed what Earth offered. Not just the medicines and materials, but the knowledge. Other hostile worlds existed in the galaxy, and the techniques learned on Earth could mean the difference between successful colonization and disaster. The first official Imperial delegation to Earth arrived 6 months later. Ambassador Thuvak himself led it, along with scientists, doctors, and even a small military contingent for training. Their dropship descended toward the Amazon, the same jungle that had defeated the 3rd Battalion. Their guide was Maria Santos, a woman who had lived her entire life in the rainforest. She stood barely half the height of the smallest Imperial soldier, wore simple clothes, and carried no weapons except a small knife. The contrast with their powered armor and plasma weapons was almost laughable. "Welcome to Earth," she said, gesturing to the green wall before them. "First lesson, the jungle is not your enemy unless you make it one. Follow my lead, disturb nothing unnecessarily, and you'll be fine." Thuvak's translation device struggled with her next words. "The forest has eyes." At first they thought it was metaphor. Then they began to notice. Every step they took was watched. Birds above, insects below, and in the shadows, the gleam of larger predators. But nothing attacked. Maria moved with confidence, and the jungle accepted her presence. "How?" Thuvak asked as they paused by a stream. "How does it know you're not a threat?" Maria smiled. "Generations of relationship. My grandmother's grandmother walked these paths. The forest knows our scent, our sounds, our rhythms. We're part of it now." She pointed to a massive tree. "That cecropia provides shelter for the ants, and they protect it from other insects. The birds spread its seeds. The fungi break down fallen leaves to feed it. Everything is connected. Humans just found our place in the web." She led them to a research station built in harmony with the forest. The buildings were on stilts, allowing animals to pass beneath. The roofs collected rainwater but also provided habitats for beneficial insects. Solar panels shared space with bird nests. It was technology and nature intertwined. Dr. Yareth, the xenobiologist who had survived the first invasion, was amazed. "Your structures. The forest is growing on them, but not destroying them." "Because we built them to be grown on," Maria explained. "The vines strengthen the supports. The moss insulates. The insects that live in the walls eat the ones that would damage the electronics. We don't fight the jungle. We invite it in on our terms." Over the following days, the delegation learned more than they thought possible. They watched humans harvest medicines from plants that would have killed unprotected aliens in seconds. They saw children playing in streams full of piranhas, knowing exactly how to move to avoid triggering feeding behavior. They observed farmers working with army ants to clear pests from crops, using pheromone trails to direct them. But the most profound lesson came when they witnessed a jaguar kill. The great cat took a capybara near the research station, and the aliens tensed, expecting danger. But Maria simply watched with respect. "The jaguar keeps the population in balance," she explained. "Without predators, the herbivores would strip the forest bare. Without the forest, we all die. Death feeds life here. It's not cruel. It's necessary." Thuvak began to understand. Earth wasn't hostile. It was honest. It showed the truth of existence without cushioning or pretense. Life and death, growth and decay, all in perfect balance. The Empire had tried to impose its will on this balance and paid the price. The military training was even more revelatory. Colonel Zhang led the Imperial soldiers through exercises that seemed simple at first. Sit still in the jungle for an hour. Move 10 meters without disturbing a leaf. Find water without instruments. Identify which insects were dangerous and which were merely annoying. "Your armor protects you from the jungle," Zhang explained, "but it also separates you from it. You can't hear the warnings. You can't smell the changes. You're blind and deaf in a world that communicates through senses you're ignoring." Gradually, the soldiers learned. They discovered that the jungle had rhythms, times when certain predators hunted, patterns in insect movements that predicted weather changes, subtle shifts in bird calls that announced approaching danger. They learned that sometimes the best defense was to be uninteresting. That movement attracted attention while stillness brought safety. Private Kolvar, who had lost 3 clutch siblings in the first invasion, found himself oddly at peace in the green depths. "It's not trying to kill us," he told his squad. "It just doesn't care about us. We're not special here. We're just another species trying to survive." "And that bothers you?" his sergeant asked. "No," Kolvar replied, watching butterflies dance in a shaft of sunlight. "It's freeing. No politics, no empire, no grand purpose. Just life being life." The medical exchanges produced miraculous results. Earth's organisms, properly prepared and administered, cured diseases that had plagued species for millennia. The Empire's biotechnology advanced by centuries in months. But more importantly, they learned the principle behind Earth's biological diversity. Competition drove innovation. Every organism here is in an arms race, Dr. Chen explained to a group of imperial scientists. Plants develop toxins, insects develop immunity, predators become faster, prey becomes smarter. The pressure never stops, so evolution never stops. That's why Earth life is so adaptable. It's been training for every possible challenge for billions of years. The cultural impact was even greater. Stories of Earth spread throughout the empire, the death world that couldn't be conquered, the primitives who were actually the galaxy's most sophisticated survivalists, the jungle that was teacher, not enemy. Young soldiers began to volunteer for Earth training, seeing it as the ultimate test. Scientists competed for research positions. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the empire viewed conquest itself. The old way, arrive, dominate, extract, had failed spectacularly on Earth. The human way, cooperate, adapt, integrate, had succeeded where force failed. It was a paradigm shift that rippled through imperial policy. Other worlds previously deemed too hostile for colonization were revisited with new approaches. Instead of trying to dominate, imperial forces learned to understand. Instead of taking, they learned to trade. The lessons of Earth, patience, observation, respect for natural systems, transformed the empire's expansion from conquest to cooperation. Earth became a hub of learning. The Amazon research stations expanded, hosting students from 100 worlds. The Sahara taught desert survival. The Arctic showed how life persisted in extreme cold. The ocean depths revealed pressures both physical and biological that no other world could match. And always, human guides led the way, sharing knowledge accumulated over millennia of coexistence with their fierce home. Maria Santos stood with Ambassador Tuvok on the observation platform, watching the sunset paint the canopy gold. Below, Imperial students practiced moving silently through the underbrush, their instructor a 10-year-old human girl who could navigate the jungle better than any soldier. "Your world has changed us," Tuvok admitted. "The Empire came to take, but Earth taught us to receive. We thought strength meant domination. Your world showed us that true strength is survival, and survival means adaptation." Maria smiled. "Earth doesn't care about our philosophies or our empires. It just tests us, constantly, honestly. Those who pass the test get to see another sunrise." In the distance, a howler monkey's call echoed through the trees and was answered by another. The eternal conversation of the jungle continued, as it had for millions of years. Now, it included new voices, alien students learning the oldest lessons life had to offer. The Galactic Empire had come to conquer Earth and failed, but in that failure, they found something more valuable than any resource: wisdom. Earth had not defeated them through malice, but through honesty. It had shown them the truth of existence, that life is struggle, adaptation is survival, and cooperation beats domination. As night fell over the Amazon, the jungle came alive with its nocturnal symphony. Somewhere in the darkness, a jaguar prowled. Insects sang their ancient songs. The trees breathed, the rivers flowed, and life continued its eternal dance. And in the research stations, beings from distant stars listened and learned, understanding at last that Earth's greatest weapon was not its hostility, but its ability to teach those willing to learn. The humans had always known this secret. They had survived not by conquering their world, but by becoming part of it. Now they shared that knowledge with the galaxy, trading not just in goods, but in wisdom. Earth remained unconquered and unconquerable, but it was no longer isolated. It had become what it was always meant to be, not a fortress to be besieged, but a university where the harshest lessons produced the greatest growth. The Galactic Empire had thought the jungle was just trees. They had learned through blood and failure and eventual wisdom that it was so much more. It was life itself in all its terrible, beautiful, uncompromising truth. And that truth had changed them forever.